Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Bond. I'm the South Region Sales Manager for eGlass. Welcome to the H.E.L.P Learning live stream. This is going to be a weekly recurring segment where we talk about some of the latest trends in education and ed tech, and we'll have some amazing guests with us. Remember, you can always sign up for notifications so you don't miss any episodes. And I would like to encourage you to chime in with your comments and questions as we go. We'll be keeping an eye on those, and those will be filtering in. And yeah, so we have our first guest, our first episode. First guest is Matt Anderson, the co-creator of eGlass. And he's here to help us understand some of the magic behind what's here. And I'll be using eGlass a little bit as we go. So I'm Luke, and we've got Matt here too. And so, welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Luke. Nice to be here.
Let's start with a very important question. What is eGlass?
Yeah, so eGlass is something that you just demonstrated very nicely. It is essentially a transparent whiteboard. It sits right in front of your face, and now you can write on the screen, you can look at the camera, you can maintain eye contact with your students. It's a device to allow you to lecture without having to turn your back to the camera. So you all see that chalkboard behind me in my laboratory here. I'm a physics professor at San Diego State. And if I go right on that chalkboard, my back is to you, the student or the viewer. And that is something that we really wanted to avoid. Hence the genesis for eGlass. Which started in my lab about 10 years ago. We called it Learning Glass, and this latest iteration called eGlass has taken this whole approach to a whole new level. It's really put it on steroids. This is a single user device that has everything you need built into it. So that's eGlass in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned, going back to Learning Glass. So actually take us back there if you would. However many years ago, and tell us about kind of how Learning Glass and using a light board, a glass board, came to you, how you implemented it originally, and what kinds of difference you see it making in your classrooms.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. One of my colleagues, Mark H.E.L.P, took me to coffee, and he said, there's a movement towards online learning, and it's going to happen with or without you. And I thought about that for a little bit, and I said, well, maybe I should get involved. And so I started thinking, well, what if I put my lectures online? So I started making little videos. Literally in my room here, I'd put my iPhone on the counter and take a video and post it on YouTube. And my students just absolutely loved it. I hated it because my back was to the camera, the audio was no good. And I thought, there's got to be a better way, right? So I quickly realized that I wanted to face the camera. I quickly realized that I had to be writing on some sort of transparent material in front of me. I also realized I didn't want to have to write backwards because I tried that initially, and it's really hard. It's not easy. So we sort of sorted out some of the technical difficulties. One was it's got to be glass. Two, you do a horizontal flip of the image so you don't have to write backwards. Luke's pretty good at it now. And then the other is you internally light the glass such that the writing really pops out. So we started working on this probably 10 years ago in the laboratory. And we've been making and selling these things across the world ever since. In the last year, we decided we needed to step up our game. And the way we stepped up the game was joining with the innovators at Pathway Technologies. Ji Shen is the CEO of Pathway and just a brilliant man. And he said, we can combine our camera technology and your glass technology all into one thing, make it super powerful, controlled by software. Everything's ready to go. And now that's all I use. All I use is eGlass. I use it at home. I use it in my classroom. I can't believe how effective it is in the classroom. It's just an absolutely wonderful tool.
Thanks. That sounds really exciting. I've heard you speak elsewhere about a survey or a questionnaire or a small study you've done amongst certain groups of your students, whether they are in the physical classroom with you, whether they're purely viewing online, whether they have access to your use of Learning Glass, eGlass or not. So can you tell us about some of your findings there?
Yeah, so one of the approaches that I use is I put the eGlass in the front of the classroom. I teach a freshman physics course of 500 students. I put the eGlass in the front of the room, and then I plug it into the projection system so it blows up the whole thing onto the 20-foot screen. And this is a way for all the students in the classroom to make eye contact with me, to see my expressions, my gestures the whole time, but also see all the writing crystal clear. They're not looking at very small font on some whiteboard. They're looking at giant letters up on a big screen. So this is a wonderful way to engage your students. And after introducing it to my students, I surveyed them. I said, what do you prefer? Do you prefer PowerPoint lectures? Do you prefer whiteboard or chalkboard lectures? Or do you prefer lectures using the eGlass? And it was sort of remarkable. 87% said they prefer the eGlass approach to education. And they can't, quite frankly, they can't believe it's not in every classroom. And, you know, this is an astounding result, but I'm also the inventor, so I was a little skeptical. So I went to UCSD. They did a similar survey at UCSD, and it was nearly as high. I think it was 80% of students said, no, this is the way to do it. The eGlass approach is the way to do it. And it just keeps everyone involved. And sort of a short little story, Luke, which I think is really funny. One of the things I love to do in my class is really get the students engaged, right? I love to get them involved in the lecture component. And so I would ask the students to volunteer to come up on the eGlass and do an extra credit homework problem, a demonstration for their peers. And the first time I did this, and I wasn't sure, that is a big experiment. The first time I did this, you know, I pull the name out of the hat and I say, okay, Joe, you want to come up and do this? And Joe says, yeah, I'm here. I want to do it. Comes down, sits behind the glass, little 18-year-old kid, right? Put the lapel microphone on him. He looks out through the glass and immediately he sees 500 of his peers staring back at him. And he just absolutely froze. It was a deer in the headlights, right? He just completely froze. And he seriously did not move for like 8 seconds. And I sat there next to him and I thought, I just broke this kid. This is terrible. Right? And finally he speaks up and he says, you know, I've never talked in front of this many people before. Is it okay if I take a selfie? And then everybody was totally engaged. They watched his whole derivation. They just woke up. Everybody was so engaged. It's like amazing to see.
So by now, after all these years of building up to this advent of eGlass, having developed lightboard technology over the past, 10 years or so?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're a physics professor, so, and I think, you know, long Goodwill Hunting math problems in the hallway of MIT, it's obvious, it makes sense. Can you tell us about some of the people that you've had a chance to network with that are outside math and science that have also, and you know, you may not relate the whole case use, but just some of the other disciplines that are able to make good use of eGlass?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's obviously, you know, I'm obviously a STEM person. It's sort of driven by the STEM field. It's really for anybody that wants to write with a pen on a surface. So on a whiteboard, on a chalkboard, if you want to annotate on your PowerPoint slides, anytime you got to pick up a pen, eGlass is the way to go. And the reason I say that is there's lots of other solutions out there, right? Digital solutions. And people just don't like those digital solutions. I don't like those digital solutions. I like the physicality of a pen on a surface, right? I can get the feedback that I need as I'm drawing. So that's really one of the main goals of eGlass is to really have that sort of that physical nature of it right there in front of you. As you're writing on the screen, right, you can see all the marks that you're making, and what you don't do is blame some other technology if you make a mistake, right? You do it yourself. Now, one thing that's interesting, you mentioned the, Goodwill Hunting derivations in the hallway, which are totally trivial, by the way. I'll explain them to you sometime. Um, the math professors always want more acreage. And what we had to point out to them was you don't get any more acreage with a giant piece of glass, right? You can build an 8-foot piece of glass and make a light board out of it. You don't get any more writing space. And the reason is kind of subtle, is it always scales to the laptop screen. Whatever the viewer is looking at it on, that writing always scales to the laptop screen. The difference is the size of the lecture. So convincing the mathematicians that a 35-inch e-glass is perfect was a big hurdle. The other fields that are really, that it's really taking off, there's sort of two. There is economics, right? People in economics write all the time, and they write equations and all sorts of fun stuff. But the other sort of surprising one is English. In the learning languages, teachers really rely on being able to write things out by hand. And I've seen this in my elementary school teacher friends. They really want to be able to write out the sentence by hand, diagram it, erase, redraw it. They want to manipulate it with their handwriting. I don't know if you've been in an elementary school class lately, but the handwriting of those teachers is impeccable. I mean, it puts my handwriting to shame. We've had a few, practicing on the e-glass, and it's just so crystal clear and just beautiful. So
I'll never be confused for an elementary teacher.
any place where you need to write on a board, this is good for you. But it's not just education. I mean, one of the things that we're finding is the companies absolutely love this approach because they are often doing, logic layouts and spreadsheet forms and stuff like that. And they just want to write something really quickly for their employees, some little message, some little reminder, kind of like the notes that you're putting on the board right now. And now they have the ability to do that. They can sit behind the e-glass and they can just do it right in front of their face.
Well, this lecture series, not lecture series, but this series that we've started tonight, H.E.L.P Learning Live Stream. H.E.L.P stands for Highly Engaged Learning Products or Highly Engaged Learning Platform. So this is one of those tools that makes learning more engaging. And like you said, it doesn't have to be an academic environment. If you're not learning in your profession, you might want to hang it up.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always tell my students, I'm teaching a senior level lab course right now, and I make them do talks. I make them do presentations to each other. And one of the points that I tell them is you're going to have to do this in your career, no matter where you go. At some point, you're going to have to stand in front of other people and you're going to have to communicate. If it makes it easier to do it with an e-glass, that is a nice little hurdle to overcome right there. It's wonderful.
Great. Well, any closing thoughts for our audience who are, this is being streamed and will be recast okay, we've got some questions coming in actually. So this is great right now for distance learning. How will it work when we're back in the classroom? So,
Yes.
Right now it's either 100% or hybrid 50-50. How would you see glass being used, if some institutions transition back 100% in class face-to-face?
So it's surprisingly effective in the classroom. I did not appreciate how effective it would be until I started using it. And part of the reason it's so effective is the following. When you are lecturing to your class, let's say you're standing in front of the chalkboard and you're lecturing to your class, and you're looking at this student, and then you're looking at this student, and then you're looking at this student, and then you're looking at this student, right? You are moving around and you are making eye contact with one student at a time. If instead you have an e-glass in the classroom, and the way it works is you put an e-glass in the classroom, you connect it to your big TV or interactive flat panel or projection system, right? The students are looking at that projected image. You can look out through the glass and see them. But what's remarkable is the following. if I am lecturing on the e-glass and I look directly at the camera, like I'm looking at the camera right now, every single student thinks I'm looking at them. Every single student is seeing me looking directly at them, no matter where they are in the classroom. This is physically impossible to do by another means, right? You have to project your face, project the writing up onto the board, and now you are looking at everyone. So it's kind of remarkable when you say, I'm sorry, Lisa, did you have a question? Suddenly Lisa goes, oh my gosh, the teacher is looking right at me and she's asking me a question. It's sort of phenomenal. In addition, you are monitoring your students. You're looking through the glass at all the students. You can see if they are paying attention, if they're getting confused, if they are falling asleep. Maybe you need to step up your game a little bit. It's kind of remarkable. And I was a chalkboard guy. I loved chalkboards. I'm not going back. My chalkboard is no longer used in my classroom. I use e-glass. On top of that, it's perhaps the ideal solution for the hybrid setting. So the teachers that I'm talking to right now, they are overwhelmed. And one of the things they're overwhelmed with is they have students in the classroom, but they also have students at home. And they are essentially teaching twice. They're teaching the kids in the classroom, and then they're teaching the kids at home. And with e-glass, you can do it all in one, right? The students are getting the exact same content because you're projecting it into the room, so all the students in the room are seeing it, and you're streaming it out to the home so everybody at home can see it. I've done this with my class. I had a 500-seat class. I had 30 students in my room with me, and I had 470 at home. And then we would rotate the 30, and so everybody got a chance to come in and view it. And what we found was the engagement of the students, and this was verified, right? We did a survey and we verified the engagement of the students was higher than in a normal face-to-face class. They felt more connected to me, the content, what they were interacting with in the classroom, even though they were virtual most of the time. So it's like a no-brainer solution. I absolutely love it.
You can see our question here. If a teacher already has lesson plans created, is there a way to use those with eGlass?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beautiful thing about eGlass is it comes with really powerful software that allows you to drag in your PowerPoint, drag in images. You can even just highlight text from a Wikipedia page and drag it into the same window. It's all vectorized, resizable. It's transparent, so you can annotate on it. It's just beautiful. So if you do rely on PowerPoint slides, no problem. If you have notes that you would want to bring in and write on the board, I mean, it's literally that easy. It's like you took your stack of notes and you walked into a room with a chalkboard. You can do the exact same with eGlass. You just pick up a pen and go. The only difference is you got to remember your students are there, not there.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. This has been great. Where can your new fans that are following us now find you on social?
So you can find me on YouTube primarily. My handle on YouTube is YoProfMatt. So if you go to youtube.com/YoProfMatt, you'll find my YouTube channel. And that has all my physics lectures. Basically every other version of Matt Anderson was already taken on YouTube, so we created something new. You can certainly find me on Facebook and Instagram. Just look up Professor Matt Anderson. And then if you're interested in eGlass, be sure to check out eglass.io. That's the new eGlass page. And you can also visit us at www.learning.glass. So a bunch of different options.
Get that in there. And I am going to thank you so much for joining us, Matt. Thank you to those that have logged in and have joined us online. Next time, we've got Marcia Kish. Marcia Kish. She's a blended learning guru. We are going to host her this same time next week. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you then.
Thank you.